It's good to see you this morning. Ryan Sollers will be speaking for us tonight. And Derek is speaking at 160th tonight. And next Sunday, Ryan and Derek will be speaking in Otis on the coast. So keep them in your prayers. Matthew 7, verse 24. I want to talk about foundations this morning, and want to talk about this verse to begin with. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and acts upon them may be compared to a wise man who built his house upon the rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and burst against that house, and yet it did not fall, for it had been founded upon the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act upon them will be like a foolish man who built his house upon the sand. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and burst against that house, and it fell, and great was its fall. Everyone has a foundation. May not be the rock, but everyone does have a foundation. That's one thing I think I learned from this story here in Matthew chapter 7. And everyone has a faith in something. Everyone has a world view. Everyone has some sort of perspective, way they make sense of the world. Everyone has some convictions. Now, if we don't take the foundation that Jesus recommends, we'll probably be given one. In the book of Romans chapter 12, the familiar passage, do not be conformed to this world. The application this morning would be that being conformed to the world means accepting the foundation that the world wants you to have. The world's going to try to give you a foundation. Now, it's going to be different from the one that Jesus recommends. But on the internet, on television, in videos, in music, in books or magazines, in school, in the college classroom, in the workplace, people are going to try to give you a foundation. Here, this is the foundation you need. But it's not going to be one that Christ offers. So just be aware of that. When the world tries to squeeze you into a certain mold, it's trying to give you a foundation. It's sand, but it's a foundation nonetheless. Obeying anything other than the words of Jesus is opting for sand. You see that in Matthew chapter 7. Everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act upon them. You may be clever. You may be talented. And we may be preparing to hibernate. But but I'm impressed by just the everyone in the passages. Everyone. Doesn't matter who you are. If you do not act upon the words of Christ, you're on sand. I want to move back to the Old Testament here. And I want to go back to the book of 2 Kings and take a look at a couple of passages. This expression is found a couple times in 2 Kings. You'll find it in 2 Kings chapter 12, verse 3. Only the high places were not taken away. And it speaks of a king in verse 2, who did right in the sight of the Lord all the days in which a certain priest instructed him. We go over to chapter 14 and verse 4. Verse 3, we have a king. He did right in the sight of the Lord, yet not like David. Verse 4, only the high places were not taken away. Chapter 15, verse 4. Verse 3, we have another king. He did right in the sight of the Lord according to all that his father had done. Only the high places were not taken away. Now, I think for the reader that may be confusing a little bit, because you might think like, well, it looks like God approved of him. And that's not what the text is saying. The text is saying that he did right up to a certain point. One man, he did right as long as a certain priest lived. Another man, he did right according to his father's standard. It's not until we get to the reign of Hezekiah over in chapter 18. And as a reader, you're probably by this time getting very frustrated. The high places, why did they remove the high places? Hezekiah, it said of him in chapter 18:3, he did right in the sight of the Lord according to all that his father David had done. He removed the high places. And as a reader, you go, amen, hallelujah. Finally, someone gets rid of the high places. You see, David was the standard. David was the standard for what a king should be. And all the other kings hadn't measured up. They had measured up maybe to their father. They had been faithful as long as someone was alive, but become unfaithful after that. And I like the lesson here. The lesson is that nothing less than absolute obedience will be satisfactory with God. Nothing less than obeying the words of Christ in Matthew 7 will be acceptable. Everything else is sand. If we follow the faith of our parents, but the high places remain, that's sand. If we're only faithful as long as our dad is alive, that's still sand. It's easy to think we have a rock foundation when we don't. You just see, the standard had not been this and this. The standard had been David. David was the standard for what a king should be. And anything less than that was not what God wanted. We got any high places left in our lives? I think there's a great lesson there. Only the high places were not taken away. The rock. The rock, of course, is Jesus, the Son of God. Matthew chapter 16, verse 18. Upon this rock I will build my church. That's the rock. And that includes that he's the only way to the Father. John chapter 14, verse 6. I'm the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. And it includes there is salvation in none other. Acts 4, verse 12. And that our eternal destiny is directly related to how we respond to what he said. If obedience to what Jesus said is missing, then the foundation is sand. What's the foundation of our life? Is it absolute obedience to Jesus Christ in everything? Or is it less than that? Both men in Matthew 7 experienced storms. And the storm was of the same intensity. It wasn't that one storm was a little stronger than another storm or a little weaker. It was, the rain descended and it blew. It was the same type of storm. So everyone will be tested, and One passage along those lines is, no temptation has overtaken you but such as is common to man. Don't think you're unique when you're going through something. What you're going through is the same thing that many other people have gone through. Countless people have suffered that trial or that temptation, that sin, that adversity, as is common to man. If you're going through something, don't feel you're being singled out. Ecclesiastes says, time and chance happens to all. Yes, other people's washing machines break at inconvenient times. Other people's DVDs just stop working that one night you were planning to watch a movie. That happens to other people too. It does. I know me and Cindy were the family videos were taken on the little Sony 8mm tapes. Well, we transfer them to VHS. Now we have to transfer them to DVD. But we're not done yet. We're not done yet. Then they go to the computer. There's some sort of format there. And you know where it's going to end? Wood. Eventually we'll have to put them on wood. It's where it all is going to cycle back to. But everyone goes through things like that. Just stuff stops working, or trials or inconveniences and sins. Both men face the storm of the same intensity. We'll all face trials and hardships. But, I think there's something else in the context. That's not the final storm. The final storm is the judgment. The reason I say that is you will see unbelievers who face a trial and they do not crumble. They don't have Christ. They don't have Christ, and they seem to do just fine. They have a financial woe, and they don't have Christ, and they survive. They don't have Christ, they get cancer, and they seem to come out okay. Not all trials smash an unbeliever. Some of them looks like they're doing great. Whatever foundation they got seems to hold up. But there's another storm in the context, and that storm goes back to verse 22 and 23. It's the judgment. There's a passage over in 1 Corinthians, before we get to 22 and 23, 1 Corinthians chapter 3 and then verse 13. There it says, each man's work will become evident, for the day will show it. Because it is to be revealed with fire, and the fire itself will test the quality of each man's work. There's a lot of people out there that got a foundation of sand, and to them and to other people, it looks like a rock. And we see that in the context here. When these individuals show up and say to Jesus, many will say to me on that day, the day of the judgment, Lord, Lord, did we not? What they're saying is, don't we have the rock? Isn't this the rock? Did we not prophesy in your name? Did we not cast out demons in your name? Perform many miracles? It's a rock. I got the rock. And then he says, I will profess to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye who work lawlessness. Sand. It's the rock. No, it's sand. They built something, but it wasn't according to the building code. Well, what that means is that you could prophesy in his name or think you are. You can cast out demons in his name or think you're doing that. You can do many mighty works in his name or convince yourself you've done that and not be obeying Jesus at all. In the book of Matthew chapter 23, I think there's a good example of that with the Pharisees. Matthew chapter 23. And it says in verse 28, even so, you too outwardly appear righteous to men, but inwardly you're full of hypocrisy. And the Pharisees also, in verse 23, they tied mint and dill and cumin, and they neglected a whole bunch of very important stuff. I think of that in the Northwest culture. I recycle. I'm out there throwing stuff in my recycle bin. But that's not going to get me to heaven. But sometimes you think that's going to add up for some points. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. There's all sorts of things you could do. I voted for the library measure. I recycle. I went to a candlelight vigil. I donated some money to some sort of charity. I put money into the little bell ringer thing at Target or whatever. There's all sorts of stuff that you can do and not be on the rock. Being busy, or even religiously busy, as the men in verse 22 of Matthew 7, they were busy. They were busy with religious stuff. It wasn't the rock. It wasn't the rock because a lot of times you can do all of that. You can do all things like that and miss verse 21. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father. That's the rock. I actually obeyed, not what I wanted to do necessarily. I actually obeyed what he said. I didn't make up my own rules. I obeyed what he said. The building materials. Don't waste a lot of effort on things that have no eternal relevance. Do not overlook things that do. And we looked at that passage. Resist, until the day you die, resist the temptation to downplay doctrine and obedience. Because when I come back to Matthew 7 and verse 21, I find that doctrine, what Jesus taught, and obedience to it, that's the rock. I know it gets ridiculed and downplayed in our society, and there's all sorts of negative comments about it, but that is the rock. That's the rock. And we need to never forget that. 1 John chapter 2, 3 through 5 is another passage that tells us that's the rock. That's the foundation. By this we know that we have come to know him if we keep his commandments. The one who says, I have come to know him, does not keep his commandments is a liar. Truth is not in him. Whoever keeps his word, in him the love of God has truly been perfected. By this we know that we're in him. The rock. You're on the rock. You're on the rock when you keep his commandments. Don't skip. Don't skip on your foundation. This, to me, would be part of the foundation, especially like for all ages, but especially if you're young here. If you're unsure about any of those topics, it means your foundation isn't set yet. If you're not really sure about the existence of God, if you couldn't really explain it and defend it, inspiration, you're fuzzy on inspiration and Bible reliability, you're kind of fuzzy on that. You're kind of fuzzy on your Bible authority or how to study or the plan of salvation or the work of the church. That's foundation stuff. You can't be fuzzy there. You get in trouble. Don't skip on that. Don't cheat on that. Put a lot of effort into that. Build well. Build well. Spend a little bit less on the computer. Spend a little bit less on the video game. Spend a little bit less on your favorite hobby or whatever, and invest in that and get that down solid. That's foundation stuff. I remember being a kid, and I wasn't the best builder as a kid, but I was always building stuff, tree forts, and I remember sometimes for a birthday, the greatest birthday present I could have ever got as a kid would be a bag of nails and 2x4s and sheets of plywood. I would have been, one year I really just wanted Mom and Dad to give me about 4x8 sheets of plywood. That's all I wanted. I thought, I could build a lot of good stuff, but I built tree forts, and some of the tree forts actually went down with me in it. I remember one time I was up there, I built the tree fort, all of a sudden we were going. And it didn't hold. And I needed bigger nails to put that 2x4 into the tree. That's the nails there. Those are the big nails you need. So that your life just doesn't come tumbling down, or you don't build something, you get in it, and you hear this kind of like, and everything collapses on you. And the life of Christ. The teachings of Christ, the parables, the Acts, the book of Acts, get Acts down. That's foundation material. And some of those lessons from the Old Testament, Nadab and Abihu and Naaman, that's foundation stuff. And allow that foundation to get tested. Don't run from trials. Whenever you go through a trial, your foundation's being tested, and you want that to happen in this life. If it collapses, then you realize, well, something's wrong with it. It's no good. I mean, there's a mistake I've made. I like what C.S. Lewis said. He said, those who try to resist temptation know how strong it is. That is why bad people, in one sense, know very little about badness. They have lived a sheltered life by always giving in. No man knows how bad he is till he has tried very hard to be good. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. In fact, what that's saying is that a lot of people would kind of view us as living sheltered lives because we don't go out and drink and party and sleep around and stuff like that. But it's the people that drink and party and sleep around are living a sheltered life. They don't know how strong temptation is. They just give into it. It's the person who has not been drinking for 30 years who knows how strong the temptation of alcohol is. The longer you resist, the longer you put up a fight, the more you really know about evil. And the more you know about the badness or goodness inside of you. Those of you who are assembled here, you're the true experts on evil. Because you try to resist it. You know how strong it is. You know what it's appealing to you on the inside. You're the expert. And so if there's, you want your foundation to be tested. Don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid of a trial. Will Christ hold? Will the foundation of Jesus' teachings hold? You have to test it. Let's see if this really works. You want that to happen in your life. You just don't want to end up at death with your fingers crossed. Okay, will it hold? Rather, you want to end up at death that say, I know the foundation of Christ is going to hold because every other trial I've been through, it's held. The teachings of Christ have held. It works. It works in real life with real problems. And trust it. And let it bear the whole weight of the trial. What I mean by that is, resisted temptations to quickly shift to a secondary foundation. I like this passage. It's over in the book of Deuteronomy. The eternal God is a dwelling place, and underneath are the everlasting arms. Which means that God's able to carry you. All of you. The entire weight of you and your life and your problems. Underneath you. The everlasting arms. Now what I mean by that is, and none of these are bad, But these are secondary foundations. And I think our mind quickly jumps to these things. Like when you're going through a trial, when life is bad. You'll say, at least I have my health. But there's going to be a time you're not going to have your health. What are you going to do then? At least I have my family, but there will be a time that you won't have your family anymore. Your mate may have died. Your kids may have moved away. And you're all by yourself. What are you going to do then? Well, at least I have a home and car and money in the bank. But what if there's a time that you don't have any of those things? What if your home is kind of run down? What if your car is 20 years old and doesn't work really well? And what if there's not a whole lot of money in the bank? Well, at least I have memories of a happy past. But what if most of the people in your past are gone? Memories can only do so much. Well, at least I can retire one day. Well, what's going to happen when you have retired and you're there and it's not all that you thought it would be? That's why I say there's nothing bad about counting your blessings. But sometimes we just need to kind of say, no, what's under me is not my health. What's under me is the everlasting arms. I'm glad I have my health, but one day I know I won't, so I'm not going to go to any of those temporary foundations. I'm going to simply say, I have Christ. That's why I'm happy. That's why I'm content. That's why I'm not destroyed. That's why I can endure. I've got Christ. I've got the rock. Because all human safety nets will eventually disappear. And what that is that's practice. When you're young, and you're going through a trial, whatever, I've got Christ. What you're doing is practicing. Because there's going to be one day when you're laying in a hospital bed or hospice or at home or whatever, that you don't have your health. You might not have your family. It's just you. But you've been practicing all your life of just you and God. You've been allowing your faith to support the whole weight of your trials. And so practice. All through your life, practice. In fact, in a sense, I think, we're all practicing for the final test. That's what we're all doing. Every day you go through a trial, you go, great, another chance to practice for the final. Another day to see, does this work? Does Christ, do the teachings of Christ, does Christianity work in real life? Don't be afraid of that. And welcome those challenges, especially by people who question you about your faith. Because anytime anyone questions you about your faith, guess what? Their foundation is being questioned at the same time. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. You know that passage. Be ready always. But I want to go to Philippians chapter 1, verse 16. There it says, I am appointed for the defense of the gospel. I like that, Paul, as an apostle. I'm here to defend the gospel, but I like as Christians here that we have a similar attitude. I exist to speak out for God. I'm one of God's PR men. I'm one of God's spokesmen. I'm one of those people on an infomercial. And that's what I always wonder about. Are those real people type of thing, the one that always gets me is the one, the IRS one of, we owed, $200,000 and so settled for $500 or whatever, and you're looking at these couples and stuff like that. But in a very real sense, every day I get to give this infomercial for God at school or work. Mark Dunagan underneath here, hey, I used to be a sinner and had a lot of problems, and I became a Christian. I've got the hope of eternal life. And I've still got problems, but Christ enables me to overcome, and I've been able to get in control of temptations and things like that. And I've got this great hope and patience, and here's virtues I have in my life now. And you better call now. See how well the teachings of Jesus hold up under examination. Welcome them. Take a look at my faith. Sure, come on. Take a look at my foundation. I want to know if I don't have the right one. Look at it. Pick at it if you want. Now, let me ask questions about your foundation too. That's fair. But bring it on. Examine this foundation. Is this true? Welcome them. Welcome questions about your faith and your life. Great opportunity to look at the other person's foundation at the same time. You know, since we're looking at my foundation, and thank you for looking at it, can I look at your foundation? You know what, as we close, and people know it's a rock. I say, Mark, how do you know that? Well, people don't debate. Well, people are very hesitant to debate Christianity. There's not a, I mean, if Christianity was bogus, there would be a line of people at the door to come in to embarrass me and Ryan and Derek and others. Come on, we want to come in and make fun of you guys. We want to come in and expose how stupid I know not some families stupid is bad, so let me, how silly what you believe is, you know? I mean, if what we were believing was so crazy, people would be lining up, wanting to debate us, wanting to embarrass us. Let's go down there. Oh, what do you want to do tonight? Let's go down there and let's pick on the Christians. Let's make fun of them tonight. Because it's so easy to pick apart what they believe, but it's not, is it? The very fact that we don't have a lot of people wanting to debate, the very fact that we don't get debate offers all the time from the website or whatever, that people are very hesitant. No, I don't want to debate. Obviously, you're telling you something. We've got a rock. And people are not coming out of the woodwork to challenge us. They might not even want to look at it. In fact, they say, it's such a rock, I don't discuss religion. Because I think a lot of times they know they're going to get beat and exposed. I don't discuss religion. My religion is a very private matter. I think we need to tell people that's a big mistake to keep it a private matter. If you got a rock, if you got the cure, you need to let people know you got the cure. It should not be a private matter. If it's a rock, it should be public. And I just lost that one there. All right. And I had a great comment there. But I still got a backup plan as we close. I like what one writer said. He said this. And it was in reference to why sometimes family members are uneasy around us. That is, unbelieving family members. Maybe friends are uneasy, or coworkers, people have known us for a long time, uneasy around us. You never know where the gospel will break out, who will be its next victim. Perhaps some of you understand now why some of your family have gotten so very nervous after you told them you'd bowed the knee to Jesus. They're secretly alarmed that they might be next. I think that's a great comment. And to me, it makes me feel a little better of that. Sometimes people are around you and they might be a little bit uncomfortable around you, not because of anything that you are doing that's offensive. It's not that you're living Christianity wrong or doing something wrong. What it is they look at you and they say, he's a pretty smart guy or she's a pretty smart girl. And they know the type of life you used to live. But you're a Christian now. And that makes them feel very uneasy because they know you're not a kook. They know you got a good head on your shoulders. Your conversion scares them because what it says is, this looks like this is truth. This is the real deal. But I don't want to get too close because I might get it too. And right now, there are some things I don't want to give up. The Bible says to become a Christian, he that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. Whatever need you have, come as we stand and sing together.